All right, we're coming on early because we got a lot to talk about. What's up, Craig? Craig with the number one post. I can't believe Canes did not make it here for the Monday kind of post weekend recap where we kind of look at how teams looked and everything like that. Obviously, Canes has got to be really excited for how Miami looked opening weekend against Niagara, but we're going to cover a lot of that, just how teams did, everything like that. Let's see. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to get in here, but all in all, I mean, a lot of you can't beat just having college baseball games to watch. Obviously, tomorrow we'll have more games to watch. The great thing about college baseball is that you're getting four, sometimes five games a week of your favorite team. So there's just like, there's not a lot of dead time in college baseball season because you have a great weekend series while you're playing a midweek matchup on Tuesday. Sometimes you're playing two, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you got a weekend series coming back up. So we're going to get into a lot of that as well. But like I said, we're going to give everyone a few more. We can give a few more minutes before we start really kind of diving in. Zach, what's up, man? I know you're excited for. I know you're excited for how Miami looked as well. I know I saw you and Canes. I kind of peeked into some of those spaces that you and Canes were doing. I think we're going to start doing that. Maybe we'll do that on Mondays going forward. Obviously, I can't do it today, but I think we'll do like a stream that also includes a space, so like everyone can talk and just like give their thoughts on kind of the games they watched and who they thought looked good, who they thought looked bad, stuff like that. I mean, you guys were having them, and I'm like sitting there hanging out with my wife, so it's like, uh, I will join them for sure, but it has to be the right timing. Just responding to some YouTube comments while we give everyone some time to join in. You should do one Sunday night recapping everything. That's a good idea too, Zach. That's a really good idea. Um, that's what I'm like. That's what I was like brainstorming this morning. It's like, do I do that Monday? Do I do it Sunday night? Um, because 100% FAU will be a huge test Tuesday to say where we are. Yeah, agreed. I mean, that's Georgia Tech. Same thing. They're playing Georgia Southern tomorrow. Again, that's a big test. I mean, Georgia Southern is a very good team pretty much every year. But I'll give Old Dominion a lot of credit, man. They had some really good arms, like guys that were just college pitchers. Their Friday guy was an ACC Friday guy. I mean, 92, 95 lefty, threw strikes. Saturday guy was really good as well. I mean, they have ODU is going to be a force, I think, in the Sun Belt. with the way they looked. I mean, they have the weekend rotation to make a lot of noise in the Sun Belt, so I'll be interested to see how they progress. Now, again, it's like, the offense did all right, so that may be a question mark. But when you have that kind of pitching, you're going to win a lot of games. Let's see here. I had to work a trade show last week, so excited to watch some games today. West Coast Pride. Yeah, that sucks when you don't get to when you're busy, you don't get to watch anything. Canes 305, 305, 305. Yeah, I was waiting for you to get in here, Canes. I know you were excited. Kyle, for your high school guys, what's your opinion on videos of working out, lifting? Send occasionally. Do coaches care? Just to be honest, like a coach seeing that you bench a lot or squat a lot. That's not like, it's great that, what I'll say is this, like, they could care less, um, like, of a video of you working out. The question is, does it look like he is physical, right? Okay, so if he looks physical, he probably does work out. I think videos of working out can show a little bit of the work ethic. But again, it's kind of the same thing as metrics. Like, no one's getting a scholarship offer because, oh, well, I saw this guy squat like 450 or whatever. Again, it's a good indication of, like, his work is in the right place and he's dedicating himself. But is it going to have a massive impact on, like, the recruiting process for an individual player? Probably not. But I would always, I'd make posts. As long as it's not like because coaches can get the wrong feel from it if they feel like, oh, this guy's posting it just to, like, I don't know. It's hard to say, right? Because there are those kids out there that post it and it's just to, like, show that they're just trying to show off their workouts, which is, again, it's like fine. But it's fine to post that stuff to make it, just so coaches, if they are kind of going through your social media to kind of check you out, they're like, okay, this guy works hard. Like, he's getting it done in the weight room. Zach, GT pitching seems very improved. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. I mean, I texted Matt Taylor after the Saturday game, the pitching coach for Georgia Tech, and I just said bullpen and like the eyes emoji, and he was like, yeah, I mean, that was, Georgia Tech. It could have been a nightmare game for Georgia Tech. The first, the starting pitcher didn't get an out, gave up 3 runs, and all of a sudden the bullpen came in, no runs given up from that point on. I cannot wait for tomorrow. Yeah, it seems like you guys are going to get a pretty good test, according to Zach in FA Florida Atlantic. Dan, thank you. Yes, concerns is cutting the wrong way, as in too much. Look at me, exactly. And again, I mean, that's kind of the norm now. Is like kids just posting stuff for clout, but also for recruiting purposes. So there's nothing wrong about it. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, I constantly tell athletes clients that I work with, if you're playing a different sport, like, I worked with a kid from Canada he was like a really good hockey player too, and I said, maybe post that on your social, because as a college coach, you're watching someone who's an athlete, right? It's very easy to, and this kid was a catcher, right? So it's a position where sometimes you can tell a kid's an athlete, but it's more difficult to see kind of what the true athleticism of the player is. But when you watch him play hockey and he's on ice skates and he's going around people and making athletic moves, you can watch that video and be like, okay, this guy's an athlete, right? So it's the same thing there. Coaches do want to see, okay, yeah, he's getting it done in the weight room, like he's taking this serious. If you're lifting and then screaming and it's like an everyday thing. Again, I don't know, but again, Dan, it's not going to, like, be a massive boost in the recruiting process for you, but it's a good sign for coaches that the kid's working. Went 4-0 on Hard Rock Bet this weekend. Took FSU all 3 games, and they covered the spread, and took USF to beat Iowa Friday night. Nice, man. That's sick. All right, so we're going to get right in. We're going to get started here. Obviously we had part of like the weekend for me is we're trying to keep track of all of our former clients and, where they are, how they're doing. It's not super easy, but we had some notable, and for Miami, we had some notable performances from former clients. And I'm trying to check on one right now, and let's see here. Let me just see what it looks like. Dude, it's let's see here. From Canes, I think Duke and UConn are pretenders. I'm changing my prediction to us beating both of them. Concern with Duke is they almost got swept by a team that doesn't have Griffin Hughes pitching for them. Very, very, very concerning in my opinion. Yeah, I mean Duke definitely. Again, the thing is this, guys. Like the first weekend, and I was talking to my dad about this actually last night. That I think you learn in one weekend, you can learn a lot about your pitching staff. But in one weekend, you're not really going to know what your offense is like yet, because off hitting is such a again up and down thing. Whereas in college, if you have legit pitching staff, like you're going to see pretty consistent performances. You're going to have like some off weekends, but not nearly as much as you do on the offensive side. So I think if your concerns about a team are pitching after week one, those concerns are way more likely to be true than hitting concerns. So, for instance, Georgia Tech, I'm talking with a lot of my former players, former guys that I was teammates with, guys that came a little bit after me this weekend about the team, and the offense was okay. A lot of late runs scored. You're fighting from behind every game, but that's not a red flag yet, because you can have just off weekends where that does happen, a decent amount during the year. But if the pitching had given up, let's just say the pitching had been pretty tough opening weekend, you're a lot more concerned about that, because again, going in the ACC, it's going to be a lot more difficult. And I will say this: Old Dominion's starting pitching was very good. I mean, even their Sunday guy was high 80s, low 90s lefty that threw strikes with 3 pitches, a very good changeup, serviceable breaking ball he could throw for strikes at any point. So up and down their weekend rotation, Old Dominion was very impressive. I think they're going to be, if their offense can score enough runs, they're going to be really good in the Sun Belt this year. But Cincinnati is ranked number 25. Yeah, and I know that they had a great weekend. So it's funny because the early season rankings are also kind of the same thing. It's like, yeah, they're kind of accurate, but a team has one bad weekend, they drop big, or the team has one really good weekend, they go up big. I think UCSB could make Omaha. They're legit. Oregon and Arizona State also. West Coast baseball rising. UCSB has two of the best starting pitchers in the country, and according to reports, their Saturday guy Flora was like up to not hit 98 or higher, I think like 8 or 9 times, and was lights out. So I mean, UCSB is definitely going to be, in my opinion, a host, like almost 100% chance of being a host, and maybe even a national seed. And if that's the case with that pitching staff, like they have a very good chance of getting to Omaha with that pitching. So I don't disagree, Cap. I think preseason you're picking like Troy, Dallas Baptist, UCSB as like the 3 teams of the mid majors that are Coastal Carolina as well as like the ones most like, and those pretty much every year by year are kind of the case. But the feeling is that those 3 teams have very strong and deep rosters. But how are they ranked? Who are you talking about, Canes? You talking about Cincinnati or Duke or who? Stanford is also very improved. That Japanese freshman will be in the running for ACC Player of the Year. Definitely ACC Freshman of the Year. But I agree. I mean, he had a great weekend. Didn't hit any home runs, but I mean, the swing. Like I said, you watch his swing. He's got an elite swing. The kid is going to hit 100%. And to be honest, like if he was on the East Coast, there's a lot of smaller parks and the ball flies better. Generally speaking, there's not the marine layer. He probably would hit more home runs. So when he comes east, watch out, especially some of the parks in the ACC. Can you elaborate on heavier bats use and Japanese players using heavy bats? Thanks. To be like this, so there was a comment on my recent video about how I switched from a drop three to a drop 1.5 in 2016, which was the year I had my best career in our best season in professional baseball. I hit 339 in AAA and almost 350 plate appearances. More than half a season in AAA that year, and hit 339. And that was the year I had switched to a drop 1.5. And the thought process was there is a point, guys, where your bat speed, like too much bat speed, can be an issue. So what I mean by that is, like, think about a wiffle ball bat. You can swing that thing as fast as humanly possible, but you don't really have bat control anymore. It's so light in your hands that you actually don't have as much control over the bat anymore because it's so whippy and so loose. And the other thing is, when you swing too light of a bat, you can get away with some inefficiencies in your path and in your swing, depending on the pitch and everything like that. So when you make a move to a heavier bat, at first I was just using it in BP. I was using it, trying to get used to it. And I almost immediately felt like my body was able to kind of make little adjustments to improve the efficiency of the path, because with the heavier bat, right, there's not as much room for air in your path and how efficient you are. So, like Rintaro Sasaki was swinging like a 34.5, 33, which, I think that don't people that aren't involved in professional baseball look at that as like a super heavy bat. And that's, like, don't get me wrong, it is, but like most professional hitters, especially at the higher levels, are swinging, drop 1.5s, drop twos, drop ones. Because think about it like this as well, with wood in particular. If I'm swinging the same model bat, but my bat is 1.5 ounces heavier, there's not any more wood in that bat. It's just denser wood. So it's heavier wood, meaning when I make contact with that denser wood, the ball is going to jump more. It's not going to break as much. So I'm going to have a little bit more forgiveness in the bat. I'm going to have more jump off the bat. And so there's a lot of advantages to it. The reason for that, for doing that. So I hope that answers your question. You're talking about Cincinnati. Yeah, I mean, I think they just had a really good weekend. Like, we're going to go. Let's get into it, and we'll cover some of the top 25 teams. And so, listen, I mean, Cincinnati, at Duke on the road, and again, Canes, you may think Duke is not as good as maybe people think. I would say, listen, I mean, if you're Chris Pollard and staff, you barely win one game on Saturday, 6-5, and then you get beat 8-3 and 19-5. Like that's concerning, right? That is concerning. I think Cincinnati's always a good mid-major team. So you're not panicking yet, but you are there. You are probably seeing some things that need to be improved, and maybe you're changing around who your guys are in the bullpen and stuff. Again, losing on Sunday by a lot is not nearly as big of a red flag as losing on Friday 8-3, because that, your Friday guy didn't do much. And again, I mean, I don't have the box score up in front of me. So I mean, Duke was up 2-1, and then all of a sudden, bottom three. Or top three and everything. Like, yeah, they end up. I mean, they just fell behind early and just never came back, really. So who knows? I mean, we are now joined by ACC analyst Dusty Isaacs. Dusty, we're going to get into some of the good performances this past weekend. I'd love to hear your take on the Georgia Tech pitching staff. What were the good things you saw? Is it a little too early to say, okay, this is definitely a better staff than in the last couple of years? What your thoughts were on that? Oh, you're right. Cincinnati is Big 12 now. You're right. But if you think about it, like, they still kind of are a mid-major team, right? They're in the Big 12, but they're not. They're kind of in that early stage transition period. Like, in a couple years, like, they're probably not considered that anymore. But I think if you, I think if you asked like 100 people, 95 people would say, "Oh yeah, they're mid-major." Yeah, they wouldn't even know they're in the Big 12. Did you also see the video I sent you? I know it was 2 minutes, but man, I've never seen a worse defensive team in my life than Niagara. Yeah, I mean that was yeah. I watched it. It was bad. It was bad. Um, so I'll show you guys this. This was the um, this is I think the line for Georgia Tech's pitching staff. That let me pull it up here. Is if you're a Georgia Tech fan out there and you're thinking, okay, is this is what the pitching staff did? Is it actually legit, or is ODU's offense not great or whatever? This is the stats you want to look at. So, for example, I'm going to pull this up. Now, if you look here, this is the totals for the bullpen on the weekend. Okay. So this highlighted spot here. Now, let me try to get this off the screen so we can see it better. Okay. So you guys see the highlighted numbers. So Tech's bullpen on the weekend. One number that jumps out you don't want to see, but it's I'll explain it. 18 innings out of 27. Right? So you don't want your bullpen throwing 2/3 of the innings, but when you have one of your starters up here literally go get no outs and walk 3 guys and hit a guy and, give up a hit, that's pretty good, right? Your starter went literally 0 innings. And your other starters covered 9. So that was, that's an outlier for sure. But I think the number one, the things you're looking at is, okay, 18 innings pitched on the weekend, only 11 hits, 4 runs given up in 18 innings. So you got a 2 ERA, 8 walks in 18 innings, really good, 32 strikeouts, 1 extra base hit, and it was a double. And so in 64 at bats, in 64 at bats, you struck out 50% of hitters almost. If you add the walks on there, roughly 50% of hitters. 2 hit by pitches, 172 opponent batting average. So if you're a Georgia Tech fan, you're looking at that, and there's not a weekend in recent memory where numbers were this good. And again, it's not an ACC caliber offense. I do think ODU had, a really good pitching staff, especially their starting pitchers were really good. Lineup is anemic. Yeah, I mean, ODU's lineup, I think for sure is not good. But again, like these numbers are these numbers are what you would expect a really good bullpen to do against an anemic offense, right? So if these numbers were like just okay, you'd be worried. But this is a pretty dominant performance from your bullpen, especially when you look at, it was basically one pitcher who gave up all the runs, right? This, Porter Bursama gave up three earned runs after he went the first 2 innings. Maybe it got extended too long, but he went 2 innings, 6 strikeouts the first 2, and then that 3rd inning kind of got away from him. So if you take, if you had just taken him out after 2 innings, you're looking at these numbers, you're thinking, man. Do you have a recommendation for wood bat material for high school summer ball? Wood bat material? I don't know what you mean by wood bat material. Patrick, clarify that again a little bit more. GT has more depth, still lacking top end arms, but they have 7 to 8 guys they can run out and feel okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Jalen Payton kid is probably ends up being the closer. I mean, Spivey did great, Gaudette did great. So you do have like those 3 or 4 guys that you feel like have really good, higher end stuff that can be kind of those back end inning guys. But like you said, Dusty, what Georgia Tech's issues has been in the past has been, you didn't have those bridge guys. You didn't have those like 6th, 7th inning guys that can maintain the lead. And so I think their bullpen is definitely just way deeper. Patrick, I always used maple. It's just a harder wood. It's not going to break as much. But if you don't have as much bat speed, like ash may be better, or birch, just because you're going to get more flex in the bat. So it's going to kind of help you out a little bit. It's going to have a little bit more bend in it when you swing versus a maple. If you don't have really, there's going to be a certain point if you don't have enough bat speed, and especially young high school kids, like they all want to swing maple, but if you don't have enough bat speed, you're kind of just swinging. You're not going to create any flexion in the bat, and that's going to hurt you a little bit. So it's whatever you want, but maybe for like a younger high school kid, Ash or Birch may be the best route to go. Cap says bomb bat. Yeah, I mean, again, it's like if you can use a bomb bat, just use it because you're not going to have to pay for a bunch of wood bats because it's not going to break and it's going to have some pretty good pop. But again, it's not like a real wood bat. And then, all right, let's go over some of these um, ACC teams and how they did in the standings. Let's see. All right, so number one. So Virginia goes 2-1 in their, Puerto Rico kind of round robin. They did lose to Michigan 5-4, but they beat Villanova. They beat Rice. And again, they lose, their Friday game against Michigan, and they don't have their Friday. They don't have their Friday guy pitching because he was kind of dealing with some issues. Um, he was dealing. I don't know if his injury has been disclosed, but again, he's probably not going to be. He's going to be eased back for ACC play. So they lose that game one. But again, they're playing without their Friday guys, so you're not super worried about that. So here you see on the right side here the results of Virginia's schedule right here. All right, let's go. Let's go to the next one, North Carolina. I mean, they did great. I mean, they're playing against Texas Tech, Power Four team. Kind of offense did pretty decent, but I mean, obviously the strength of UNC is their pitching, and pitching did great. So 5-1, 8-3, 4-2. I mean, they're giving up on average like 2 runs a game. You're going to win in this era. You're going to win a lot of games pitching like that. So UNC finished out really good. No concerns there, obviously, yet. I mean, things can change pretty fast. But and then we go Florida State. Like Zach said, they took care of business this weekend. If my internet will load. Okay. Florida State playing James Madison again. It's a decent mid-major program, but like, Florida State with the caliber of team they have and the best pitcher in the country on Friday night, they're going to be expected to win these games. But again, dominant fashion, 6-0, 9-2, 10-0. So, I mean, just really Florida State, if you're a Florida State fan, you weren't worried at all this weekend about what these guys can do. And you weren't worried about losing the game at all if you're Florida State. So let's go back to some of these others. We go to NC State. And we're not loading again. D1 Baseball's website is messing with me now. Let's see if we can. Let's just restart it, see if it'll do it again. James Madison's bats were awful. But like this is what you have to remember, Zach, is that like you're facing Jamie Arnold game one. Like that, it doesn't matter how good your offense is, like he's gonna dominate pretty much every team in the country. And then they have really good pitching behind him. So sometimes your bats are going to look awful just because the pitching is really good. And that's, if you're James Madison, that's kind of what you're going to go with right after that weekend. You're just going to be like, man, hats off to Florida State's pitchers. They did a heck of a job. We'll come back and, we'll come back and do it again this, Tuesday and get turn it around next weekend. Okay. So since I can't show you on D1 Baseball's website because it's not showing really anything. Again, NC State playing Fordham, another just really decisive series. They went 11-1, 12-2, 19-6. They didn't even play one full game because of the new run rule stuff. Um, that's just been around a couple years now, but they 8 innings, 7 innings, 7 innings. And again, like the idea with that's a really good sign if you're, again, it's, NC State is supposed to sweep the series. But one of the concerns, if you were an NC State fan, is that the offense was going to be a little bit unproven, right? That's your main issue. If you're That's the main thing you're worried about if you're an NC State fan. There's a lot of unproven bats, some freshmen, some transfers, guys like that. And you just, you're going to be really happy with the performance of the bats uh, this weekend. Going 3-0, you're scoring a lot of runs. The pitching did what everyone thought the pitching's going to do. If I'm, listen, uh, if you're NC State, you threw 22 innings. If I'm nitpicking, you walked 10 guys in 22 innings like that. You kind of want that number down a little bit, but again, as a staff, that's not terrible. 25 strikeouts. So all around, NC State did a really good job. But again, that's a series they're supposed to sweep. Nothing wrong with it. Like they did what they were supposed to do, but you don't really know for sure yet if the NC State lineup is going to be able to score enough runs yet. But really good sign for them early. All right, Wake Forest. Man, D1 Baseball's website is freaking out. All right, I'm going to give this, if it doesn't work anymore, I'm just going to go to these teams' websites. Okay, that's what we're doing. All right. Let me stop sharing and pull up. All right, we're going to Wake Baseball. And we're just going to go through their stats, and just kind of, again, I'm going to just tell you guys what I think. So Wake went 4-0. Okay. Long Island dominated, Marist dominated, Long Island dominated, Marist dominated. Okay. Again, you're not really going to know anything about Wake yet because, again, these are games that they have to win these games, right? These are going to be big killers for them if they're, and we'll zoom in here. Okay. So one of the things we know is that, they got Houston Merrick, obviously 10 hits on the weekend, 10 for 14, 3 home runs. Wake is going to hit. It's probably going to end up with one of the best offenses in the ACC, if not in the country. As a team, they hit 412, right? So that's an indication of just kind of the competition level, right? They hit 412 as a team. Opponents hit 182. That's what you kind of expected to happen. I mean, look at the pitching staff totals, 210 ERA on the weekend, 30 innings. Let me see if I can. All right, let's see. 30 innings on the weekend. They gave up 20 hits, 21 walks, which I think they're not going to be too happy with the 21 walks, just to be honest. But 44 strikeouts, you're going to be okay when you do that. Just 5 extra base hits. So all in all, really good weekend for Wake. All right, so let's go to Clemson. Let's pull up Clemson. I mean, I'm going to have to just do this every time now. All right, so let's pull up Clemson. Played Oklahoma State, came back late. Big win over a really good ranked opponent. Big time win for Clemson. Play Arizona again. Really good team. Uh, they got unfortunately they got bounced out of the top 25, but again, we're a preseason top 25. I think they ended up going 0-3. So maybe, like Kane said earlier about some teams, maybe Arizona's a pretender. We don't know yet. Um, all right, we're back. I don't know what that was. Can you guys hear me? Stupid stuff. All right, let's look at Clemson stats. All right, so Clemson guys, this is the let me just, can you guys hear me now? I just want to make sure everything's working properly. All of a sudden, like I just went off screen. I didn't even know. Okay, so looking at Clemson, I'll give you a reason why like this was a really really good sign if you're a Clemson fan. So obviously the offense did great. 324 again against really good opponents, right? You're facing basically like three top 25 caliber opponents. Ole Miss is outside of the top 25, but again, it's an SEC opponent, right? And they got good players. So you're beating Arizona, you're beating Oklahoma State, who's still at 19 in the top 25. So I mean, you end up losing to Ole Miss, which is probably like the worst of the three. But like all in all, you faced three really good programs. You hit 324 as a team. Zero home runs. That is concerning, right? That is a little concerning. But again, you're playing in a big league stadium. And again, like a lot of these college parks are kind of bandboxes, and so that they hit 10 doubles, which is great. Again, watch that home run number in today's era. You're seeing like teams hit maybe two home runs a game, right? So you could easily see them have six home runs right now. They got zero, so that could end up being a concern moving forward, especially they're not stealing a lot of bases, everything like that. So if you're not hitting a lot of home runs, you better be doing stuff on the bases, everything like that. But like you said, Canes, it's a big league park. Exactly. So it's going to be harder to hit them out, right? Now, here's the massive green flag if you're a Clemson fan. You had three starting pitchers. All of them had one walk. Okay. Their best starting pitcher, who's one of the best in the country, was Aiden Knock, who got hit up a little bit, gave up two doubles and two home runs. So really, this stat line could be totally different if, he just gives up one home run or whatever. But just, when he got hit, it was hit for damage. So when your best starting pitcher gets hit a little bit, that's going to happen. But as a whole, their starting pitchers are not walking guys, and they're all striking out guys. So 4 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts, 3 1/3, 7 strikeouts, 4 innings pitched, 7 strikeouts. Now, again, the reason that's good is because this is not like a Northeastern mid-major or small, lower level D1 that's they're playing against. These are top 25 teams that they're having these performances against. So your starting pitching looks really good early. Your offense did great, lacking a little bit of power. Bullpen pitched okay, right? Like, you have a 9 ERA right now, but again, you have some back end bullpen guys that just kind of got lit up against Ole Miss. But that's something to watch as the season progresses. Is the bullpen going to be good enough to complement the starting pitching that Clemson has? But we'll just have to wait and see. But again, overall, a really good showing by Clemson. Now let's go to Duke and Kane's favorite team. Also in a dome, no one to help the ball carry. Yeah, but you know what? In those domes, like the ball usually carries better. Like, for example, like in Milwaukee, in that park, the ball just flies. So the dome, and a lot of the domes, the ball just flies because there's no, like, the idea is that in a lot of parks, outdoor parks, like, the wind is blowing in as much as it blows out typically. So you're going to have a lot of days where the ball goes nowhere because there's no wind blowing in, or because there is wind blowing in. But in a dome, you don't have that. So, actually the funny thing in the dome is, like, a lot of them will have like vents open in the back. So actually air will kind of naturally push towards the back. So, a lot of those places, a lot of those indoor stadiums, and the ball kind of does fly, but it's still a big park, right? And you got to think about it. Your offense is typically, this is going to be a lot of time where your offense is trying to start to get going. So, it's a good sign that they hit for a high average. They did hit a lot of doubles, but it's just something to watch moving forward. Now let's look at Duke. And let's see full screen here, maybe. Okay. Patrick Osborne. Lots of wind yesterday at William and Mary versus URI. 36-22 loss for us. Home runs everywhere. Yeah, that's just one of those college games that's just going to be a meme for the rest of the season. Not just a lot of home runs, but there were a lot of walks in that game too. But yeah, certainly that's just one of those crazy games that when you're, I can't say I've ever been in a game that's that crazy, but when you are in games that are kind of crazy like that, you kind of just think, like, what is going on? Like, you can't even coach at that point. You're just like, well, whoever's going to win this game is going to win it. Like, I'm not going to be able to do anything. Okay, so here's Duke. And let's look at maybe some issues. So as a team, hit 238. And remember, this is against Cincinnati, so it's a good program. But this is again, like I've told you guys, you're not going to know nearly as much about your offense as you do about your pitching staff after week 1. So right now, tough start to the offense for Duke, but it's just 3 games in. Again, it's Georgia Tech's offense. Again, when we look at Georgia Tech, we're going to see kind of similar, not quite as bad, but similar type numbers where just a lot of guys kind of got off to that slow start on the weekend. The difference is Georgia Tech was able to win all 3 games. Duke loses 2 out of 3. And so let's look up here as well. Now, starting pitching, Ryan Higgins goes 4 innings, 1 walk, 4 Ks, 3 hits, pitched really well. Next guy up, Kyle Johnson, 4 innings pitched, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. You're a little bit concerned about that. James Talon started 1 2/3 innings, 1 hit, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. Like this guy, again, maybe his last start on the weekend, right? This is the type of start opening weekend where you think, okay, we can't have, that cannot happen again. Because this is essentially, again, this is almost an instant loss when your starter goes an inning or less. And we'll look at Georgia Tech because there was an even worse outing. And you get, 4 walks. So he's just not throwing strikes behind everybody. Even though he did end up striking out 4. So basically it was either a walk or a strikeout, pretty much all of his outs, right? He went an inning and 2/3. But not a good start for Duke's overall. Like your starting pitching just looked not great if you're Duke. And then, the bullpen not looking great. I mean, a lot of big numbers out there from the bullpen. Definitely had, 4 or 5 guys throw pretty well. But, like I said, you're going to know more about your pitching staff week 1 than you do about your offense. And so right now, if you're Duke looking at your pitching staff, you're kind of going like, is it as good as we thought it was going to be? And again, like you just have to get guys that throw strikes on the weekend. You can't have a guy going inning and 2/3 and win a lot of baseball games in the ACC. So I guess we'll just go to Georgia Tech now. And obviously, all right, so let's see, Cap, what you say. Indiana State putting up 36 on Wagner was crazy. That's hard to do in a slow pitch softball. I mean, yeah, it's like almost impossible to do. Like when that happens, you're kind of just sitting there and you're just like, what? Like nothing's going right. That like to score 36 runs in a baseball game. Think about it. I mean, that's 4 runs an inning. That's 4 runs an inning. And we had games this weekend where teams didn't even score 4 runs in a game. So that it's just everything's going right for the offense. Indiana State had a 20-run inning. Yeah, I saw that. Again, that's just like defensive miscues, walking a bunch of guys, home runs. I think college baseball would be a better product if they changed to wood bats. The issue is like wood bats will be way more expensive for the schools because think about it, in a 60-game season with college hitters who are going to get blown up much more, with a professional hitter, right? Let's say you get a dozen bats. A lot of times you can make it through a whole year with a dozen bats, but you're going to be very close. Most guys, like if you're in big league camp, you're getting probably 24, some even more than that. But you're going to go through anywhere from like 10 to 20 wood bats in a professional season. So in a college season, you're probably going to go through 5 to 10, but that number's even probably higher because they're just overall not as good at hitters. So they're getting jammed more. They're hitting balls off the end more, and they're going to break more bats. So, and you're talking, $150 to $200 a bat, depending on the brand and everything like that. So all of a sudden, it just gets way more expensive, and you would have like Zach said, you would have 1 million broken bats if college players use wood bats. I mean it would be very difficult for schools. It would just be way more expensive, way more money involved. So let's look at Georgia Tech stats from the weekend. All right, so look at offensively, 224, like very surprising. But what I will say is Old Dominion starting pitchers were very good. And when I mean very good, I mean definitely a couple ACC, like an ACC Friday guy, an ACC Saturday guy, and really an ACC Sunday guy. All 3 left-handed pitchers, all of them threw strikes. Just 3 really impressive pitchers for ODU. So again, these offensive numbers are not as surprising as you would think. But again, you're still, you'd like to see better out of the offense. But like I said, it's just week 1. You're going to know more about your offense in 3 more weeks, right? If in 3 more weeks it's still looking bad, that's when you're starting to kind of be like, I don't know if our offense is going to be great. But when your pitching does really bad week 1, that's usually a little bit more likely to be the case with pitching. So again, Drew Burress, pretty quiet weekend. He had the walk-off grand slam, but just 2 for 11, 1 home run, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. But you add in there was about 3 or 4 hitters with no hits. That makes it more difficult too. They are missing John Giesler, who I talk about a lot. He's out indefinitely with a shoulder injury. So the offense, again, not a great start to the year offensively, but then look at the opponents. Pitching staff really balled, right? Pitching staff really balled out. You look at the starting pitchers for Georgia Tech. Tate McKee went 5 innings, 2 hits, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts, just 1 unearned run. Riley Stanford on Sunday, 4 innings pitched, gave up 5 hits, but only walked 1, right? Great walk numbers so far, 5 strikeouts. Opponent's batting average, definitely want to get that down. But I think for Riley Stanford and what guys know of him, that was a very good first start for him because, command has been his issue in his career. And for him to go out there and walk one guy and hit one guy in 4 innings, like you'll take that all year. You'll take that every start with any pitcher, really. But for him, that was really, really good to see. And then Brady Jones, this was the almost a WTF moment on Saturday. Comes out, he's 94, 95. You think, man, mechanics look decent, look good, strong, physical kid. He's throwing velo and just can absolutely not throw a strike. Gave up 3 earned runs in the first with no outs. But Georgia Tech bullpen, I think Gaudette came in with no outs, struck out the side. So that's not something you're used to at Georgia Tech. What you're used to happening is, okay, we gave up 3 and there's still a couple base runners on with no outs. Like those guys are going to score. Nope. Gaudette came in, shut the door, and then the bullpen threw nothing but zeros the rest of the game. Bullpen gave up no more runs, and Georgia Tech was able to come back and win the game. So, Georgia Tech's offense started out slow, but the pitching did such a good job. They're at 3-0. And I'll like talking to a bunch of the guys I played with and people around the Georgia Tech program, like all of us agreed that was the first weekend series in years that the pitching staff legitimately carried the weekend series, like carried the series. It's always the offense. The offense, we gave up 10, but we scored 12. It's always that kind of win. This was like pitching staff held it down. Offense was able to score enough. That was it. So really good sign if you're a Georgia Tech fan because you're pretty sure the offensive numbers are going to improve. That's kind of James Ramsey's calling card. His offenses are always very good. So you're not worried about that. But what you're excited to see kind of the pitching staff. And then we're going to go to Boston College next. Let's go through some of your comments. William and Mary was mercied in 7. Okay, yeah, it's even worse then. Yeah, you're right. You would have a million broken bats if college players use wood bats. Yep. Do you see anything in Drew Burress' swing early on? I'm sure he will get going very soon. No. And again, like you're a bad hitting coach if like 3 games in with Drew Burress, you're trying to be like, oh, there's something wrong or there's something. And again, like that's very natural to think that way. But this kid has such a high baseball IQ. He understands what's going on. Just had a rough weekend, right? That's it. Just had a tough weekend. He still had some good at bats, hit some balls hard. Could have easily had 4 or 5 hits on the weekend, and then we're not even saying anything. So I think he's going to be fine. Like you don't start to worry about him until like 3 weekends in. You're not seeing anything improve. But to me, he's going to be fine. Swing looks very good. It's just, again, hitters, you're just going to go through times in the season where you're not hitting the ball well. You're going to have bad weekends. And he's the type of player that he's like, all right, we're good. Like he's not, I can guarantee he's not stressing about it right now. So I even if I did see something where I'm like, yeah, that looks different or whatever, it's like, no hitter is going to be exactly the same year by year. And then when you try to chase last year, it's impossible because it already happened. Bad things happen. So you just got to worry about, okay, what do I got to do to get to right the ship? And I'm not worried about him at all. John Zoo, what's up, John? Agreed, Cap. I'd want to see wood bats. Hard to understand how big programs can't afford wood when Harper played in a wood bat league in JUCO. The issue is this: they have bat deals and everything like that with the metal bats. There's other things as well with wood bats, but I'll just leave it at this. The one of the I'll say this: a big reason why you're seeing metal bats is because college baseball has never been more popular, and people want to see home runs. They want to see extra base hits. So if you're marketing college baseball, the last thing you're going to do is switch to wood bats and see the offensive numbers go down, like very dramatically. And that is 100% the case. Like the offensive numbers would go way down, um, relatively speaking, if they switch to wood bats. The difference with a wood bat and a metal bat is that you hit the ball off the end of a wood bat, it's not going anywhere, right? And especially a lot of these college hitters, it's just that, like, most professional hitters can use wood bats. If you're not a professional hitter, you're going to not do well with a wood bat. A smaller sweet spot, way less forgiving. We see all these kids now in this era, butt out swing, home run, or off the end, home run, jammed out of his mind, home run. That wouldn't be the case with wood bats. So you'd see home runs go down, you'd see offense overall go down, and I don't think that's something the NCAA wants right now with how popular college baseball is. So that's another part of it. And okay, so let's look at Boston College. So Boston College went 1-1 on the weekend. They played USC Upstate, a very good mid-major program, very good high octane offense mid-major program. So again, it's a good test early for Boston College. They did have a game canceled on Sunday, so they only played 2. They went 1-1. And obviously both games were pretty close, but we'll look at the numbers and just kind of try to get an idea of what kind of offense is Todd Interdonato going to be? Is he going to have the full speed ahead, speed style offense going? So let me pull that up, and then we'll go over some of what you guys are saying. Sinetra, you go from high school metal to wood in the summer, then go back to metal for college. But the thing is this: the wood bat leagues in the summer, like going to those, if you're a college coach or you're an advisor or you're a scout, like when you see most high school hitters swing those wood bats, you're just like, this is such a waste, because you're watching kids who they're not nearly strong enough, they're not nearly good enough hitters, and they just get blown up and break bats all weekend, and you're just like, this is tough to watch. So I again, the wood bat tournaments are there for the very few draft prospects that scouts want to see with wood, but because of that, they have to make everyone swing it. When I watch a high school freshman or sophomore tournament where they're swinging wood bats, I just cringe. It makes no sense. Outfielders are playing like deep infield. It's really dumb. But let's look at these Boston College numbers. Patrick says, I don't mind the bats. Everyone plays with the same rules, even with my son as a pitcher. Yeah, I don't mind them either. And again, like, as long as people are upfront and honest about the fact that like the ball is traveling better than it has certainly since the BESR bats were basically banned from college baseball, and in some cases even more so than the BESR bats, because what you're seeing is all these single season home run records are getting broken. And like, listen, you can't break those records if the bats are not at least on par with the BESR. And you add on top of that, like the baseball that they have in there that's super juiced. That's the reason you're seeing these offensive numbers where they are. That's it. And that's why you're seeing a lot of hitters get drafted and getting a pro ball, and all of a sudden, like, not quite the guy he was in college, right? And that still happened when I played, but it was much more likely that guys, Chris Taylor, for example, is a great example. He was at Virginia. He was, when he was drafted, he was like a 288 or 290 hitter at Virginia. And again, you think about that now, you're like, oh, he's pretty good. But back then he was a really good hitter in that climate, because the ball went nowhere. Ball didn't jump off your bat at all, everything like that. And then he ended up being like a 315 hitter in minor leagues. He's been a great hitter in the big leagues for the last 10 years. So it was a way easier transition, was what I'm saying, from guys that played my era to pro ball, because it was almost like you got to pro ball and it's like, man, the ball jumps more off this bat than it did off the metal bat. But okay, let's look at Boston College. So in 2 games as a team, they hit 292 against USC Upstate. That's a really good sign. 4 home runs, 5 doubles. So they're getting the extra base hits. 21 hits as a team, 18 runs scored in 2 games. Again, really good. 10 walks in 72 at bats, solid. 19 strikeouts, solid again as a team. And then 12 of 13 in stolen bases. So, guys, Boston College is good. I mean, I promise you, if it's either going to be this year or next year, they're going to get scary for teams to play, because 13 stolen base attempts in 2 games. In 2 games. Their opponents had 2. Now, USC Upstate, completely different offense. You can tell, look at their OPS as a team, their batting average. They had 7 home runs. Like, Upstate's game is home runs, right? They're a lot like UGA, for example. Like, they're going to, talking to Brock Bennett, like they're going to try to hit the long ball. That's what their offensive strategy is going to be. Upstate is always the same thing. They're going to walk, they're going to hit home runs, right? And so, split the series, only 2 games, unfortunately. But let's look at the pitching staff now. If you're Boston College, and again, they gave up some runs, but this is a very good USC Upstate is a very good offensive team. What I will say is, look, Eric Schroeder, 1 start, 3 innings pitched, 2 hits, no walks, no strikeouts. That's a little concerning, but got a lot of weak contact, 182 opponent batting average. Boston College was pretty conservative with the pitch counts this weekend, everything like that. So I do think you can't tell as much based on these numbers. It's only 2 games, but when your starter goes 3 innings and 2 2/3 innings, again, you're going to rely heavily. You're going to have to use a lot of bullpen arms, and you're going to have to kind of dip into that part of your bullpen that's just not great, right? And everyone has that, whether it's 2 guys or 4 guys or 6 guys. So I'm really excited to see Boston College this season, because I just want to see how this offense plays in the ACC, right? That is what I want to see. So up next, let's go with let's see. Make sure I cover all the teams. All right, I forgot all the West Coast teams. All right, so we'll go to Miami. So for Canes, we're going to go to Miami. Here we go, Canes. Miami baseball. Let's pull them up. I can't believe we didn't go there second. It's like I'm making Canes. Canes is salivating, waiting for us to do some coverage on Miami. But again, I mean, if they don't have the stats, okay. Canes. Why are the stats not updated on Miami's website? That's annoying. Okay. Obviously they play Niagara at home, Alex Rodriguez Park. Canes, I need you. Can you guys hear me still? Canes, can you guys hear me? I don't know what's going on with this today. Let me check my. If you are a Miami fan, a lot to be a really good showing, right? Like, this is about best case scenario, just dominant game, right? 14-2, 10-0, 11-1. What else can strikeouts went from 11 to 8 to 5. Dude, why? I'm going to show you this. Canes, this is annoying. All right, when I pull up stats, there's no link for 2025. And I click our overall stats, and it goes to the 2024 team. All right, so we're just going to have to imagine the stats for Miami. A couple of our former clients, and we'll just go to the box score and just, I guess we'll go to box score by box score. Okay, so for Miami, Brian Walters, great start, 5 innings pitched, 2 walks, 3 hits given up, 10 Ks, all really good. Michael Fernandez come in, no walks. Brixton Lofgren comes in, no walks, right? That is what you're looking for. You're looking for your bullpen guys. Listen, like, strikeouts are great. In Miami, 15 Ks in 7 innings. Like, you're getting more than 2 strikeouts per inning. But what I want to see is low walk counts, right? Because what that means is, man, teams really have to earn their way on base. It's going to be harder to score runs that way. And so if your team is showcasing pretty good numbers, what? Oh, that's where it is. Okay. Meaning, they're hitting a lot, they're striking out a lot of guys, or they didn't give up a lot of runs, but they're walking a lot of guys. That's a red flag, because when you get to ACC play, like, those walks are way more likely to turn into runs, and they already do, right? But so that's what I'm looking at when I'm looking at the pitching this early. Strikeout numbers are going to be, generally speaking, are going to be higher, because my headset just turned off. They're going to be higher early on because you're not playing ACC competition. I hate saying it because it makes it feel like I'm like dunking on the lower level D1s, but it's just the reality. Is that your pitching staff's probably going to have more strikeouts against early competition. 1, because hitters are trying to get going, and 2, because it's not the ACC yet. But when they're not walking guys, that's a good sign. So really good sign there. In game, I believe that was game 3. Yep. So let's look at game 2. And I'll pull this up. I'll stream this as well. Okay, let's zoom in here. All right, Canes, you're going to... Okay. All right, so this totally threw me off because the Miami symbol is above this lineup, and I'm like, wait, who is this guy? Wrong guy. Okay, so Miami, 12 for 34. They're hitting over 330 as a team. Tanner Smith, 4 for 4. Todd Hudson, 3 for 3. Daniel Cuvée, 1 for 3 with 2 walks. I know he kind of had some. I think game 1 was a little bit rough. But Griffin Hughes, one of our former clients, who is obviously a transfer to Miami this year, just shoved. 6 innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 walk, 11 Ks. I'll say it like this: I had a guy who's involved with major league teams, Canes, and you'll like this. Say to me, he thinks Hughes is a big leaguer. Right? He thinks Hughes is a big leaguer. So that's a really good sign for your Saturday guy, right? Your Saturday guy is getting comments made like that. So again, just a really good sign. 1 walk, 1 walk, 1 walk. Like, you'll just take that all day. 2 walks here, okay. But just, again, if you're walking 5 guys in 9 innings as a team, you're winning a lot of games. Like, you're winning a lot of games. Walters set it in. 3 hits and 2 walks were all in the first inning from Walters, and he settled in. Yeah, that's great. I mean, he didn't let it get to him. That's a really good sign mentally that he can handle pressure. Lofgren was someone I was not confident in. He impressed me, but it's still Niagara. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's still Niagara. That's why you got to kind of take things with a grain of salt. But what I'm looking at are like, okay, there are certain indicators like walks, and hits given up. If you're giving up a lot of hits to Niagara, but let's say you're still winning. Let's say you win 10-4. but you gave up 7 hits or 6 hits. That's concerning, right? That's gonna concern you. If you're still beating them by a big margin, but you walked a lot of guys, that that's a big issue. But you're not seeing that in these games. And then we'll look at Friday here. Well, obviously where they win, opening day 14-2. Pull this up, zoom this one in. Jake Ogden done a great job, really just kind of setting the table out of the leadoff spot. Dorian Gonzalez 3 for 3, Cuvée 1 for 4, 3 strikeouts. Yeah, I mean, again, this is the thing is early on in the year, you're going to see more strikeouts from guys who are trying to kind of get that. Like as a hitter in the early part of the year, you're trying to figure out your timing. You're trying to figure out your plate coverage and everything like that. So you are going to see guys like me personally, like in April in professional baseball, I always kind of had a little more higher strikeout rate. One, because you're trying to get off to a good start. You may be pressing a little bit, but yeah. And Canes, I saw you sent me a strikeouts. But I think Cuvée is going to be – it's a lot like Drew Burress, right? Both of them kind of off to, like, not like a terrible start, but like just not kind of what you thought. But they're both going to be fine. And obviously a lot of guys got in here. But you look at the pitching again. What's the – and this is my thing, Canes. Like, what's the common denominator for all these starts? 5 innings pitched, 4 hits. Okay. 0 walks, right? Okay, that's a really good sign. 4 strikeouts. I kind of probably want to see more strikeouts, especially with my Friday guy. But again, you're not going to stress out about that too much. 1 innings pitched, 0 walks. 3rd inning, 0 walks. Okay. 1 1/3, 2 or 1 walk, 0 walks, 0 walks. So like if I'm a Miami fan, one of the things that I'm very, very ecstatic about is that the pitching staff, again, similar to Georgia Tech, just came in and threw strikes and got outs. Robert is okay. He's not a strikeout guy. And was it like sinker slider guy? I mean, what's the repertoire look like for you? Give us the repertoire, Canes. And that's good information because if you are that type of pitcher, you can't walk guys, right? If you're giving up contact, let's say you're a sinker guy that gives up ground. It's going to give a lot of ground ball contact. You can't walk guys because just ground balls are way more likely to be hits in college, right? And that's another thing to think about. There's a lot of pitchers in college baseball that are, especially sinker guys, that give up contact. Their numbers usually are going to improve pretty substantially in pro ball. Based on if you got to look at the batted ball data, but there's sinker ball pitchers that in college, the infield defense is just not nearly as good as it is, let's say in like AA in pro ball. So a sinker guy really needs a strong defense behind him. So the stronger the defense behind him, particularly in the infield, a sinker guy is going to be better, right? All things remaining equal, because a sinker baller lives and dies by kind of where the ground ball is hit. And that margin for error for a ground ball hit in college is much wider than in pro ball where it's much thinner, right? I was an elite runner. I was a 3.8, 3.9 runner down the line. And if I hit a ball in the 6 hole in AA, AAA, I was out a lot of times. Up the middle, I was out a lot of times, right? In college, that was a hit every time for me, every time. So again, something, just a little bit of knowledge there. Okay, let's see. Next, Louisville had a great showing. Man, there's so many teams in the ACC now. Like I'm gonna have to do the SEC tomorrow. Let's go with Louisville. They played really well. And again, I mean, it just goes to show, guys, that like the ACC is going to be super deep this year. I mean, it's going to be incredibly deep. Canes has said about 25,000 things. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like California colleges are as successful nationally compared to our high schools. I don't know if that I don't know what that means, Patrick. Does that mean they are successful or they're not successful? Or you mean like the really good high schools, like Harvard Westlake and stuff? Clarify it for me. He had a great Cape Cod. Right. Yeah, I know he had a really good Cape Cod, and you have video of how we scored, and you have the video of how we scored the 10 runs from game one. Yeah, you're right. I also sent you his strikeouts. Robert's contact pitcher. He has a few pitches, fastball, sinker, changeup, slider. Okay. Patrick Forbes looked great. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. So, all right, let me pull up. So, obviously, Louisville, they took down Texas, lost to Oklahoma State like pretty bad, 12-3, but then came back and beat Arizona, who is nationally ranked pretty much by everybody. They fell out of D1 baseball's top 25 this week. Patrick says, yeah, I think only UCSB is ranked in the top 25. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that, like you got to think about it, Patrick, a lot of that, and we'll get to Louisville here in a second. A lot of that is the fallout from the Pac-12 breaking up. So what you see is that for, let's say for the last 4 or 5 years, the Pac-12 has just lost, 20 years ago, the Pac-10 at that time, Pac-12, same thing, was viewed as, one of the best baseball conferences. Now, fast forward 10 years in 2015, it's still kind of thought like that, but it's becoming very top heavy. It's like Oregon State, Oregon, UCLA, Stanford. Like those are the teams you really, Cal was good sometimes. Some of the other schools are good sometimes. Washington State, but like you didn't have the depth of the ACC and the SEC. And then you fast forward again another 10 years, or let's just say 5 years, and all of a sudden, like these teams are falling off, right? Like, so as a recruit, you think like you really want to go play in the SEC, in the ACC. So as a conference, it's harder for you to win recruiting battles against SEC teams, ACC teams, because kids want to go places where they're going to win, and they want to go places where they're going to play with other really good players. But we have multiple high schools nationally ranked. Yeah, but the issue is like, are all of those players going to California schools? And I think if we did a deep dive, we could figure that out. We'd have to look at it. But it just seemed like over the last 20 years, the Pac-12 has been this steady decline, right? Just steady decline. And now the Pac-12 is not a thing. And all the schools have gone off to different conferences. Okay, so like I said, Louisville beat Texas, lost Oklahoma State 12-3, and then beat Arizona 13-1. Let's look at the numbers and just kind of see what is cooking for Louisville, and what is getting cooked for Louisville. Yeah, exact. That was my point, Canes. Is that like like the players that are really good from California are not going to a lot of those California schools. So players you should be winning recruiting battles on. I mean, think about Kevin Parada from Georgia Tech, who ended up being, one of the best players in college baseball. He went to Georgia Tech. He's from California. And so you see that happening all over the place, where you may have like a really high draft prospect committed to a UCLA or something like that, or an Oregon State, but they get picked up in the draft. They don't make it. So it's about the players that make it to your team. And if you're not getting those really good players to your conference starts to fall apart. And so again, like Kane says, they're all going to the ACC, SEC, or the Big 12, or getting drafted. Thanks. You guys are right. A lot of our best kids leave the state. Yeah. So the Pac-12, it's sad because the Pac-12, like historically, like USC used to be one of the best programs in the country. And now it's like you don't even hear about them. You don't even think about USC, right? Now they have Andy Stankiewicz taken over the helm recently, who's trying to kind of bring it back into the limelight. But it's going to be difficult, man, because think about it. You don't have that West Coast like big time Power 5 conference anymore, right? So you're kind of you're kind of hamstrung if you're a West Coast school. Um, and then again, if you are like Stanford or Cal, you're going to be traveling east all the time. And traveling east is way harder an adjustment as a player than traveling west. Okay, so let's look at Louisville's offense on the weekend. Hit 300 as a team, 0 home runs. That's concerning. But again, they're playing in a big league. I believe were they down in Puerto Rico? Where were they at? Canes, you can answer that for me. But again, they're not playing in a very offensive climate. But only 4 extra base hits on the weekend. That's a little concerning. They slugged as a team 355. Like that's not a good sign. But like I said, they hit the ball well. You don't really know much about your offense yet. But one thing that is concerning if you're Louisville, 8 walks to 36 strikeouts. Now they did play really good teams, right? They played really good teams, Texas, Oklahoma State, Arizona, but that is alarming. 8 walks to 36 Ks. That's not what you want. And again, 1 stolen base on the weekend. So if you're not hitting for power and you're not stealing bases, it's going to be really tough to score runs. So we'll have to see how their offense kind of continues to kind of reveal itself to us as we get into the season. But now we look at the pitching. And again, this has always been a strength of Louisville. They've always had guys that can really pitch. You look at Michael Peter, 4 2/3, 1 hit, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts, but against really good competition. Patrick Forbes, 5 innings, 5 hits, 1 walk, 11 Ks. I mean, going to be really good. Definitely a true ace. Parker, now, is this Reed Detmer's brother? Let's check. Sophomore. Yeah, his older brother, Reed Detmers. So he's got some bloodlines. And again, he got hit up a little bit on the weekend. But 3 innings, 3 hits, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. All right. Look at their bullpen. A lot of guys threw up zeros. Back end of the bottom guys did okay. But you look at the team as a whole, 26 innings pitched, 23 hits given up, 16 runs, 13 walks, 34 strikeouts. That's you'll take that. Those are really good numbers. So as a whole, opponent batting average 230. So their pitching staff did pretty well on the weekend. And again, this was against top 25 competition across the board. Texas being, again, a really good program. Oklahoma State, Arizona. So these numbers are going to be higher than a lot of the teams you see because, again, this is way more close to an ACC weekend. So if you're giving up on average, 5 earned runs a game as a whole in your pitching staff, you're gonna win a lot of games. Remember, like you look at that number, surface level, and you're like, man, that's kind of high. But in this offensive climate, like this is not. If you ended the season with a 5-1 as a staff, that's pretty good. So I think that's going to be the strength of Louisville's team. And the question is going to be, are they going to score enough runs to do well in the ACC? We'll have to wait and see. So next team we're going to look at is Virginia Tech. Let's look at Virginia Tech. Okay, so, and we got a lot. So Aquinas, top 2 players are both committed to Miami. Mason Greenhouse and Carter Headnot. There's a higher level of respect for California kids who commit to ACC and SEC for sure. Yeah, exactly. LSU is dominating California in 26. They beat us for 2 kids, Anthony Murphy and Dylan Manatee. Problem for Stanford is they are the elite of the elite with academics. Yeah, Stanford's always going to be good. And again, they've been very good. Last year was a little rough for them, but before that, I mean, they were a College World Series team and everything like that. So Stanford's going to be fine. But a lot of those teams, again, it's just again in Stanford, it's going to be a boost for Stanford because they're in the ACC now. So you can commit to a California school and be in one of the premier conferences in the country now. And they run an MLB stadium, so that makes sense. But still, 4 extra base hits on the weekend and 8 walks to 36 strikeouts. That's tough. So obviously, all right, let's look at Virginia Tech. They're playing against, they played against Bucknell this past weekend. They go 2-1. Nothing crazy, but the offense scored 19. They won 19-0 opening night. They did play a doubleheader, so game 2, it's really tough to sweep a doubleheader. You almost always split it. They lose 6-8, and then they win game 3, 27-1. Okay, so the offensive numbers are probably going to be okay. But let's take a look at it. Let me pull it up for you guys as we look into it. Okay. So as a team, they hit 333. Coog, what's up, man? As a team, Virginia Tech hit 333. They had 9 doubles, 2 triples, 3 home runs. So, I mean, they were banging. Virginia Tech always bangs. They always have a really good offense. 12 walks to 10 strikeouts. Again, they're playing Bucknell. But again, I mean, that's a really good sign. Not stealing any bases. They had 1 attempt and got thrown out on it. So they typically have been a long ball team. And then looking at the pitching staff, pretty good, guys. 3.5 ERA. Brett Renfro, 4 innings pitched, 1 hit, 3 walks. You're a little bit worried about that. 6 strikeouts. Overall, though, it looks like they had an opener in one of the games. Their one starter was pretty rough, probably in the second game of the doubleheader. But overall, pitching staff threw well. Again, it's against Bucknell, so you just don't know. You don't know how legit it really is. But for now, that's what we know about Virginia Tech. We're going to look at Virginia now. Coog says, "What's up, fellas? My Cougs won the series." Bro, Cougs, Canes. We would have lost that bet on Friday. Brother, we were thinking about you on Friday. Me, Zach, and Kyle. Yeah, that was. Yeah, we were a little bit worried for you. In the last inning of the game yesterday, got interesting for sure. All right, so let's look at again Virginia playing a stronger schedule. They lose game 1 against Michigan 4-5 in 11 innings. They didn't have their Friday ace available. They win against Villanova 3-1. And then they win against Rice 7-0. Again, down there in Puerto Rico, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to hit the ball out of the park and everything like that. But let's look at their numbers and pull it up for you guys so we can analyze it. Okay. I thought about the minus 200 was like, dang, we done jinxed it. Yeah. That's tough when that happens. As a team, they hit 270. Again, it's against a little bit better competition. 1 home run, 6 doubles. They are down in Puerto Rico, so a little bit tougher to hit the ball out of the park, thick air. 13 walks into 28 strikeouts. You'd like to see that a little bit better. They did have, Henry Ford, slow start. Godbout, kind of slow start, but like an okay weekend. A lot of stolen base attempts. So this is something we may see Virginia doing this year. They had 11 stolen base attempts, 9 of 11, so they really high percentage. But look at the pitching staff. Pitching staff totals on the weekend, 1.91 ERA, right? And that's without their Friday ace, Evan Blanco. So as a whole, they didn't really even use that many arms. I mean, look at the amount of arms they used in 3 games, almost none. 3 of them being starters. So they just used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bullpen arms the whole weekend. Starters did really well. 6 innings pitched, 1 hit, 0 walks, 10 Ks. Okay, that's pretty good. Bryson Moore, 5 2/3, 1 hit, 2 walks, 6 Ks. That's pretty good. And Jay Wolfuck, who probably was not going to be starting, or maybe would be. We don't really know. He has been a guy that started for them. He's been like a back end bullpen guy, but pitched really well. Gave up a lot of hits, but only 1 walk to 5 strikeouts. And then the bullpen really took care of it. Pretty much every bullpen arm gave up like no runs. So Virginia looking really good early. Again, the offense a little bit slow, but again, like Kane said, we're not going to be too worried about Virginia. I got home from the Miami game and I put your game on and I'm like, wow, 14-3. I was like, if that was me, I would be hiding. I'm not worried about Virginia. That's also without them crushing the baseball. They're going to be really good. Yeah, and their offense is going to be one of the best in the ACC. So for them to do what they did and pitch the way they did, like Virginia's, and we all kind of knew that, but Virginia's going to be fine. All right, let's look at Stanford. Let's look at the Stanford Cardinals. So let me bring up Stanford here. So they played Cal State Fullerton. Let's wait. Oh, they actually played today at 4:05 as well against Fullerton. So it's a 4-game series. They have won all 3 games so far, 13-1, 6-3, and 14-11. So let's look at the numbers. Let me pull it up for you guys. Can I make this full screen? I hate when it's like this. All right, I'll pull it up anyway. Okay, so as a team, let's look at Rentaro Sasaki. 3 games, 6 hits, 14 at bats, 2 doubles. Really good start to the year for Rentaro Sasaki. Man, can I please make this like the whole screen? I can't, but let's just look at it. So as a team, they hit 348, 40 hits in 115 at bats. That'll play. And again, against Fullerton, which is kind of not where Fullerton used to be. Again, like there's a lot of these West Coast schools that, you think of Cal State Fullerton 10, 12 years ago, they're one of the best mid-majors in the country every year. And they're just they're kind of falling off a little bit. But Stanford hit 7 doubles, 2 triples, 3 home runs, 15 walks to 21 strikeouts. So they walked at a really high rate, did not strike out a lot. So the offense looks really good. Again, they have the freshman phenom, Rentaro Sasaki. Pitching staff pitched to a 3.96 ERA. 25 innings pitched, just 8 walks to 22 strikeouts. So not a lot of swing and miss of the guys that threw, but they didn't walk a lot of guys. They're walking like 1 every 3 innings, which is really good for an entire staff. And the opponent batting average is 191. So again, pitching staff has looked really good for Stanford so far. They're playing again today at 4:05 Eastern time. Kane says they also play them again today. Yep. Situational hitting. He looked great. Yeah. I mean, he just looks like a professional hitter, man. And the swing is elite. I mean, just watching the swing is elite. Yeah, that's all you have to say. I mean, the swing is elite. All right, let's look at Notre Dame. Let's look at Notre Dame. Let's pull up Notre Dame. So Notre Dame played against North Florida down there in Jacksonville to start the year. They win game 1 5-3, win Saturday 19-6, and they lost Sunday 8-1. Let's look at the stats and just kind of see what went well, what didn't go well for Notre Dame. Pull that up for you guys right now. So let's see. Just had one of our 2026 commit to Louisville. Or let me see. Sorry, nope, Louisiana Lafayette. Let's see. So, okay, as an offense, they hit 267. You're a little bit worried about that, but again, it's early. You can't tell much about an offense. 2 doubles to 3 home runs, so 5 extra base hits in 101 at bats. That's not great. Slugged 376. On base percentage was really good at 397, right? Worked a lot of counts. So 21 walks to 27 strikeouts. You like that. 5 of 5 of stolen base attempts. So they ran a little bit. Looking at the North Florida's a really good mid-major. And let's look at the pitching now. Kane says that's a great mid-major. It is. So let's look at the pitching staff. Pitching staff pitched to a 6 ERA. And that's going to concern you a little bit, right? A couple of your starters got hit a little bit. Jack Raydell went 4 innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. You love that. But as a team, threw to a 6 ERA, 24 innings pitched, gave up 22 hits, walked 12, which, okay, that's fine. 33 strikeouts, so they did get a lot of swing and miss. So again, I mean, I think pitching staff, okay start for Notre Dame, but when you're looking at this and comparing it to, okay, what's this going to look like when we get into the ACC play? And these numbers are all probably going to get worse in ACC play. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're maybe a little bit concerned of the pitching staff. And again, the offense start okay, but again, we won't really know much about the offense for another couple weeks until we see guys kind of get going and what they look like. All right, so let's look at now. We're going to go to Pitt, who started the weekend 3-0. All right, let's see here. So Pitt this weekend played Eastern Michigan. They won 9-8 Friday in 12 innings, 11-8 on Saturday, and 17-2 on Sunday. So great start to the year with 3 dubs. Doesn't matter who you're playing. You start the year with 3 dubs, you feel pretty good about yourself. But let's look at the offensive numbers and kind of what they tell us. So let me pull it up for you guys. And we'll look at, obviously, the pitching numbers as well. Okay, so if I can get that off the screen. As a team, Pitt hit 330, 36 hits and 109 at-bats, 6 doubles, 2 triples, 7 home runs. So they slugged it out. Really good sign offensively. 27 walks to 29 strikeouts. I mean, that is amazing. You love that if you're Pitt. So the offense got out to a really good start if you're a Pitt fan. And then looking at the pitching, let's look at the numbers. That's totals 5.46 ERA, 28 innings pitched, 31 hits given up. You're a little bit concerned about that, giving up more hits than innings pitched. You struck out 30 guys in 28 innings, so you got some swing and miss. 9 walks, right? So that's really good as well. You walk basically less than 1 guy every 3 innings, just a little bit below that. But they're giving up a lot of hits. So if they're going to have success, if they're still giving up a lot of hits, they just have to limit the walks, which they did. Opponent batting average at 287. You want that lower. But overall, some decent numbers here again. But against Eastern Michigan, you'd like to see these numbers a little bit lower. But positive sign. What's the positive sign? 9 walks in 28 innings as a staff, pitching-wise. And again, if you have a 5.46 ERA as a staff at the end of the year, like, you're going to be happy with that. So I think good start across the board for Pitt, but we'll just have to see how they continue. And then we have one more team I think we need to look at. I think we've looked at all these other ones. Let me check. All right, we got to look at California. So let's look at the Cal Golden Bears. All right, let's look here. So Cal, this past weekend, started out against Nevada. They won game 1 14-1. They won game 2 11-3. Cal Berkeley, Canes, Cal Berkeley. And then they lost 10-1 They do play again today at 2 p.m., I believe, Pacific time, so 5 p.m. Eastern. Let's look at the stats. They play again today, so we'll see. Seems like these West Coast teams are playing 4 games straight to start the year. I'm guessing they won't have a midweek game, but we'll see. All right, so let's look here. Yeah, everyone in the ACC is 2-1 and better. Okay, so as a team offensively, Cal hit 283, 5 doubles, 1 triple, 3 home runs, so hitting the ball slugging it pretty good. Isolated slugging is right around 161, so you like that. 12 walks to 19 strikeouts. So they're not walking like a math. I mean, again, they're basically right at a 10% walk rate, which you like. 19 strikeouts and 99 at bats, pretty solid. Just like a 20% strikeout rate as a team, which is solid. Let's see. Not really running much at all. So again, the decent slugging. 9 extra base hits on the weekend, so that's 3 extra base hits a game. You kind of want to see that a little bit higher, but again, it's early. And then let's look at the pitching staff. Pitching staff as a whole pitched to a 4.67 ERA, 27 innings pitched, only 18 hits given up, 16 walks in 27 innings pitched. You kind of want that number lower, but 34 strikeouts. So making guys swing and miss. 184 opponent batting average, even with getting kind of blown out on Sunday. So again, the pitching staff did pretty well this weekend, even when you get blown out in one game. They were pretty dominant in the first 2 games. We'll see what they do today. But looking at the pitching numbers for Cal, like you're pretty happy with these numbers, except for the walks. You want to see that a little bit lower. When you're walking more than one guy every 2 innings, you kind of want to see that number lower. First 2 starting pitchers for Cal did really well. 3 innings pitched, 1 hit, 2 walks, 4 Ks, 4 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 walk, 4 Ks. Again, like what you see in these first couple weekends is, bullpen arms are going to throw a little bit more than normal just because you're starting pitchers, you're trying to build them up. You don't want them to go too deep early, just pitch count wise, and you want them to be fresh for the end of the year. So, your bullpen's going to cover on average an extra like 4 or 5 innings opening weekend, sometimes even more, just based on the pitch counts and how far you want your starters to go. But a good start overall for Cal in the ACC, opening weekend, first year in the ACC. So as a whole, the ACC did really well this weekend, right? Like you said, Cal. I mean, Boston College split the series against Upstate because one of the games was kind of, inclement weather canceled. Duke goes 1-2 against Cincinnati. Again, we'll have to see how Duke bounces back next weekend or this coming weekend. They could look really good, but we have to see how they bounce back. But overall, ACC, if you're an ACC fan, and are pulling for the ACC, you're pretty happy with how they performed early. I think tomorrow we'll go over the SEC teams and just kind of compare and contrast how they did versus the ACC. But overall, I mean, you're again, if you're an ACC fan, you're happy with how they performed. And again, the stat for the weekend, I think, in the ACC is Georgia Tech's bullpen. I mean, that's the kind of outlier stat. And Monty Taylor from College Baseball Central actually just tweeted this out like half an hour ago that, he actually picked Monty's sleeper pick for Omaha is Georgia Tech. He says 18 innings pitched, 3-0, 2 ERA, 1 save, 32 Ks to 4 walks for GT Baseball's bullpen that covered 18 innings on the weekend because of Brady Jones not getting 1 out in the Saturday start. So if you're a Georgia Tech fan, that is not just a green flag. That's like a massive green flag. Even if you think ODU's offense is not great, again, a lot of ACC teams face some offenses that you think are not great this weekend and did not put up dominant numbers like that. So you have to be careful with how you perceive an opponent's offense early on, because it's one of two things. Either the offense isn't that great or the pitching staff is just a lot better than you think. And I think I'm leaning to more towards that Georgia Tech's bullpen is just a lot better than I think people give them credit for. And one of the reasons is what we talked about preseason, Canes and Zach and all you guys, that Georgia Tech staff before the season said, we have a lot of freshmen that are going to pitch, especially out of the bullpen. And we think they're going to have to step up. Like, they're going to have to be guys we can go to. But if those guys pitch like they've pitched in the fall, we feel like our pitching staff is going to be way better than expected. Because again, when you say, hey, we're going to have like 5 or 6 or 7 freshmen that we're going to go to, your immediate thought is, that's not a good sign. But if they're guys that can throw strikes with good stuff, and one of the things you saw out of Georgia Tech's bullpen this weekend is not only did they have better stuff overall than in years past, threw way more strikes, right? When your bullpen throws 18 innings and walks 4 guys, and 3 of those walks were from one pitcher, you're ecstatic about that, right? You're ecstatic about that. 32 strikeouts to 4 walks. They had, I would guess they had the best weekend of any bullpen in the country by far. And again, 2 of the starting pitchers looked great as well. So Georgia Tech, I think that is the stat of the week, of the weekend for any pitching staff, is that Georgia Tech's bullpen just was lights out for 3 straight games, right? There was not one game where you think, the bullpen, they're looking like they usually do. They looked like the bullpen for Georgia Tech. Again, it's early, but they looked like the bullpen for a team that's gonna fight to get to Omaha. Just to be honest. And I think Miami, you could say the same as well. I mean, Miami, who was picked to not finish great in the ACC, looked really good this past weekend. So just a lot of really good numbers for the ACC. 64 analytics. If you're a Miami Hurricanes fan, basically said Griffin Hughes had the best pitching performance of any starting pitcher in the country this past weekend, according to 64 analytics. So again, I mean, that's a great sign if you're Miami and that's your Saturday guy, right? So a lot of really good stuff this weekend. College baseball stuff. See if there's anything out here anything else we want to talk about more. I have a video coming out later tonight talking about swing decisions and how amateur hitters, the reasons why they struggle a lot of the time is not because of their, it's not because of their swing mechanics or anything like that. It's mostly because of their swing decisions. And what I mean by that is what you saw this weekend with a lot of hitters who struggled was they get a really good pitch to hit and they take it for a strike. And then all of a sudden they're in an 0-1 count or a 1-1 count, and they chase after a pitch that's not a strike and put it in play and get out. Or they fall behind 0-2, 1-2, and then they, get a tough pitch called on them and they complain about the umpire, when in reality, you should have hit first pitch. It was right down the middle, belt high on a tee for you, and you took it for strike 1. And so goes in depth. It's going to be about 17 minutes long, talks about swing decisions and how you can really adjust your approach based on the pitcher to what you should be thinking and where you should be looking based on the pitch. And that's a conversation me and Daniel Palka, one of my, my freshman year roommate at Georgia Tech and teammate for 3 years and one of my best friends. That's one of the things we noticed this weekend with a lot of teams, was that you have hitters that go up there and they just don't really seem to understand how to put themselves in the right mindset and right approach to make good swing decisions. And so I'll talk about that later tonight on the video on YouTube. So check that out. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm going to cut it off now. Tomorrow, we'll probably go into the SEC and kind of who looked good, who looked bad. Again, if in the ACC, really the only team that didn't look great was Duke. But again, it could be one of those weekends where they just don't play well. Again, you really don't know anything based on the first week, but there are certain things that can stick out and kind of tell you something. So we'll have to, again, it's going to be exciting now, guys. We got college baseball content all week now. We got games all week. We got, all weekend. So this is the exciting time. I can't wait to kind of spend the season talking about this stuff with you guys. We got like Kane said, we got midweek madness coming up tomorrow. So we'll have a lot of stuff to cover on Wednesday and everything like that. So thanks for tuning in and all the comments and conversation.